There's two big releases in the Laravel ecosystem today, Laravel 11 and Reverb. So why don't we take a look? Now, I've been waiting for this particular release for a little bit since it was first publicly announced or teased, mostly because I think a lot of the changes that are being made and introduced into Laravel 11 really benefit people like me, people who grew up in the JavaScript ecosystem and are looking for something a little bit more batteries included. And one of the things that's been on my mind is that sometimes you create a new Laravel application and you're like, hey, there's so many files, there's so many things that I need to figure out, and what does everything do? But this is a way to simplify things, to streamline things, to make things a lot better for the end user who's just getting started with Laravel. And for those who have been in Laravel for a little bit, and still give some of those benefits as well. But I think one of the things that Taylor Otwell describes it as is just simplicity. That's the goal today. So today we're thrilled to announce the release of Laravel 11 and Laravel Reverb. Now, Laravel Reverb is something I haven't got the chance to play with just yet, but I do know what it does. It's basically a WebSocket, a first-party WebSocket package. Instead of before, it was usually Pusher or Ably, I think is another one. But now Laravel Reverb is first-party out of the gate. So let's take a look. As we announced at Laracon EU, Laravel 11 introduces a minimal application structure using SQLite by default, implementing health routing, offering per second rate limiting, supporting graceful encryption key rotation, improving queue testing, introducing new artisan commands, adding resend mail transport. I have not heard of that one. Integrating prompt validator and more. Check out our founder and CEO, Taylor Otwell, live demonstrating what's new in Laravel 11. If you haven't gotten the chance to watch this video, go and take a look. It's really interesting. It's awesome to see just the purpose and the reasoning behind moving everything into this new direction. Reverb is the latest addition to the Laravel ecosystem and is a first-party scalable WebSocket server that has been introduced to provide robust real-time capabilities to your applications. To get all the juicy details about this release, check out our official release notes and upgrade guide. Below, we'll cover some of the highlights. So let's take a look at these. This is what I'm here for. I'm basically just want to take a look at these with you and see what my thoughts are on it as well. And it's just something to think about as you're either just getting started with Laravel or upgrading. So, minimal application structure. This is the part that really excites me because I think that it's one of the biggest turnoffs for a lot of people who live in the JavaScript ecosystem, or just people who like a little bit of minimalism in their code, or they want a batteries included framework, but they don't necessarily want everything given to them all at once. They want to add the things that they need at a given time. And I think this is what Laravel 11 is offering. So Laravel 11 introduces a minimal application structure for new Laravel applications without requiring any changes to existing applications. The new application structure is intended to provide a leaner, more modern experience while retaining many of the concepts that Laravel developers are already familiar with. The app folder has been massively simplified. Both the HTTP and console kernels have been removed. The 9 middlewares that were rarely customized have now been moved into the framework itself. The exception handler has been removed, and the providers directory has been streamlined to a single provider. Here's what the new app folder looks like. Now, this is really interesting because I'm one that I think this is created for. There's a lot of people who do customize every single, HTTP and console kernels, the middlewares, all that stuff. Most of the time, I haven't touched any of those for my applications. And if I do, I'm adding something and adding like a custom middleware. And we'll get into, or maybe it gets into exactly how to do that, but it's really simple. It's basically, you just add it to, I believe you add to the app service provider. They have a way to do that now where you don't have to add your own custom middleware and then add it to the web middleware group, that kind of thing. So here's what the new app folder looks like. Rest assured, customization remains a priority. To adjust the high-level application, here we go. It's at app.php. To adjust the high-level application behavior settings, you can utilize the revitalized bootstrap app.php file. This file allows you to modify your application's routing, middleware, service providers, exception handling, and more. Correction, it was not the app service provider. It's this revitalized app.php. So now there's a lot of great things I like about this. One, I like when everything is as in one place as possible. And this kind of provides that capability. So instead of having to have middlewares in 3 different spots, and then when you're in your service provider, you are implementing some things on boot or on load, this just simplifies that. So now you have your routing, your middleware, service providers, your exception handling, all of that in one file. Some of the things that stands out to me when I'm looking at this is you have your with middleware function right here, but then you have being able to have exceptions as well as appending. So that's the biggest thing, is you can say append or prepend. So depending on where you want a new middleware in your middleware lifecycle, maybe you want it at the beginning, maybe you want at the end of all of the standard middleware that comes out of the box, and then exceptions as well. So yeah, I like this. I think it's clean. I think it simplifies a lot of things that people can get caught up on when if you're brand new, you type in Laravel new, your application name. Most of the time you can feel a little bit overwhelmed. I think this helps alleviate that stress. In addition, the routes folder has been simplified. API and channels are no longer presented by default, since many applications do not require these files. This is cool. So I've used API. I have not used channels because I haven't used any kind of real-time thing. And it's interesting to see that Reverb is launched with this, which I assume would use the channels.php route. But most of the time you just need your console and web. And I think it's going to talk a little bit about the new way of using console commands as well, which I'm excited about. Okay, instead they can be created using simple artisan commands. This is great as well. Instead of having to make all these yourself, they're saying, hey, here's some artisan commands, PHP artisan install API, and now you have those files as if they were already generated. So you don't have to worry about, okay, let me create this file, copy and paste something from the docs. These application commands, these artisan commands are already given to you. You just have to decide when you need them. And there's more. There are numerous details about Laravel's new application structure that we can't cover in this blog post. Make sure to check out our release notes. I'll probably be diving a little bit more into Laravel 11 and the specifics about Laravel 11. I'm going to be doing like a primer with Laravel 11 and Livewire next week. So, Laravel Reverb brings blazing fast and scalable real-time WebSocket communication directly to your Laravel application and provides seamless integration with Laravel's existing suite of event broadcasting tools, such as Laravel Echo. Furthermore, Reverb supports horizontal scaling via Redis's publish subscribe capabilities, allowing you to redistribute your WebSocket traffic across multiple backend Reverb servers, all supporting a single high-demand application. So this is one thing that I was actually listening to the Laravel podcast with Taylor Otwell and Matt Stouffer. And it's something that really interested me. One, they mentioned in the podcast that they're running Forge on the 4 gigabyte server. And then 2, within Reverb, you don't have to be limited to the server that your application is running on. You can split Reverb across multiple backend servers, and you can support a high demand application doing that. You don't have to limit it to one server that Reverb is running on. It is not currently capable to run Reverb on Laravel Vapor at this moment, but it's not that hard to set up a new server to run Reverb to support your Laravel Vapor application, which is what I would probably do for any application that I need Reverb. So here's an example of a stress test with 30,000 clients maintaining open connections to Reverb. So you and your 3 users, I think you'll be fine. 30,000 clients maintaining open connections to Reverb, where each connection is subscribed to 10 different channels and more than 6,000 messages are being exchanged per second. So, Reverb is obviously for people who just are doing like fun projects. Additionally, that's just crazy. It's crazy to me that Laravel developers, the Laravel team, is providing something like this that works great with Laravel, that is built specifically for Laravel out of the box without you having to, pay any extra. It's free, and it is something that they just want to give back to the community in this way. It's something that you can build a full product, a full company on this software. It's crazy. Additionally, you may monitor the performance of your Reverb servers in Laravel Pulse to get a better understanding of the number of connections and messages being handled. To dig deeper into Reverb, consult the complete Reverb documentation. I haven't talked about Laravel Pulse in a video. I did a live stream talking about Laravel Pulse and playing around with it. But it's awesome. It's using the tall stack, so it's using Livewire. And its key benefit is just being able to monitor some of those like expensive queries, expensive long-running queries, that kind of thing, without having to set up a whole nother monitoring system. Laravel Pulse just gives you all that out of the box, and you can do custom cards in Laravel Pulse as well. SQLite by default. This one is probably one of the more controversial ones, but I want to talk about how it's not what you probably think it is. If you were saying, hey, Laravel's now SQLite by default, you would probably be thinking, okay, so it sets up SQLite for me, but then what happens if I know I'm using, MySQL or Postgres or something like that? That's not what it is. By default, new Laravel applications use SQLite for database storage, as well as the database driver for Laravel session cache and queue. Furthermore, creating a project using Composer create project command or through the Laravel installer. So that's what I use. If you're using Laravel Herd or Valet or anything like that, you have access to Laravel new, then your application name. It will automatically create the SQLite file and run the initial database migrations for you. So one of the things it doesn't necessarily mention here, but what it means by SQLite by default is that is the one that is defaulted. So if you just press enter as you're creating a new Laravel application, it's going to bring up SQLite first, and you can just arrow key up, arrow key down to the database that you need, because it's using Laravel prompts. That's the command line interface to give you the option of what database would you like. By default, SQLite. And that's usually the one that I automatically set up every single time I'm creating a new Laravel application. So it's awesome that they give you this because, one, I think SQLite and a lot of creators and a lot of developers have put out amazing content on SQLite. But SQLite is completely capable for a production application, especially if you're not necessarily sure if this is going to be something that scales or if you want to put any more time and attention into that. Put it on a server with SQLite and you're good to go. It's awesome. I'm still waiting for the Terso Laravel SQLite integration. I don't think that it's possible right now. I've been following a couple pull requests to see where it's going. I think it's a libsql issue with PHP, but that will be really interesting. Or we can get Terso with Laravel, because I think then you could use SQLite with Terso and Laravel Vapor, for example. Okay, this allows you to begin building your application immediately after creating a new Laravel application without being required to install additional software or create additional database migrations. Again, I think all of this kind of is narrowing down to the fact that the Laravel team wants to make it as easy as possible for new developers and for people who are just creating a new Laravel project to get up and running as fast as possible. So when you create a new Laravel project, Laravel new, your application name, you get the opportunity to just be ready with cache, with database drivers, with queues, and not have to install Redis or a different database, for example. Health routing. This is really cool. It's super simple. There was a bunch of different packages, like Spotsy even have their own package to give you this, but now it's just there for you. New Laravel 11 applications include a health routing directive, which instructs Laravel to define a simple health check endpoint that may be invoked by third-party application health monitoring services or orchestration systems like Kubernetes. By default, this route is served at /up. And we saw this in this app.php file here. So you have this health command with routing directive. So you have your web routes, your commands, and then this /up. So you can modify that just right there. So one line. So when HTTP requests are made to this route, Laravel will dispatch a diagnosing health event, allowing you to perform additional health checks relevant to your application, such as verifying database connectivity, ensuring the cache is working as expected. That's really interesting. I did not know that. I knew they did a brief overarching health test. But this is really interesting. So if you needed to say, hey, I want to make sure that my connection to OpenAI is still valid, you can just run it in this dispatch diagnosing health event. And then that /up just handles all that for you. I love it. Queue interaction testing. Previously, attempting to test that a queue job was released, deleted, or manually failed was cumbersome and required the definition of custom queue fakes and stubs. However, in Laravel 11, you may easily test for these queue interactions using the with fake queue interactions method. Okay, this is in PEST. So it may release a job with a delay, and PEST I think is now the default, but of course you can still use PHP unit. Job is with fake interactions, handle, assert released. Love it. Besides the assert released assertion, which you can use to verify if a job was released back into the queue, you may also use the assert failed or assert deleted assertions to determine if a job has been failed or been deleted, respectively. This is awesome because it's one of the trickier parts that I had to deal with, and I ended up just not doing tests for that particular aspect of my application. But I was using OpenAI with my application secure request, and it's a lot of background jobs. It's a lot of queues. It's a lot of checking to make sure that, okay, OpenAI actually returns some information and I can move on with the next job or batch of jobs. And it was tough to test that. And this would have been great. And I'll probably actually implement that in the next couple of weeks. Graceful encryption key rotation. Since Laravel encrypts all cookies, including your application's session cookie, essentially every request to a Laravel application relies on encryption for security reasons. However, because of this, rotating your application's encryption key would log out all users of your application. In addition, decrypting data that was encrypted by the previous encryption key becomes impossible. So this is one of the things that Taylor was actually talking about on the Laravel podcast, was if you wanted to change your application key for whatever reason, let's say you're just change it frequently for security purposes, or you had some sort of issue that you need to change it. Now all of your users, let's say you change that let's say you're changing it when you push a new pull request into your application. Well, in the past, all users would have to be logged out and then logged back in because there's no way of decrypting that data and then re-encrypting it for the new application key, even if those are valid users. But now Laravel 11 now allows you to define your application's previous encryption keys as a command or a comma delimited list via the app previous keys environment variable. That's super interesting. So when encrypting values, Laravel will always use the current encryption key, which is within the app key environment variable. When decrypting values, Laravel will first try the current key. If decryption fails using the current key, then Laravel will try all previous keys until one of the keys is able to decrypt the value. This approach to graceful decryption allows users to keep using your application uninterrupted, even if your encryption key is rotated. For more information on encryption in Laravel, check out the encryption documentation. This is really interesting. I don't know enough about this world to know, okay, what's the purposes of rotating your encryption key so often, but to be able to do that without having to hurt your current users is something that I could see being extremely valuable, especially in maybe more security-minded applications, banking, that kind of thing. So the fact that you can now do that without having to change the user experience for your users is awesome. And so much more. These are some of the things that we can't cover in this particular post. Per second rate limiting. That's awesome. So instead of having to do, I think 1 minute was like the lowest for rate limiting. So per second, resend mail transport. I want to take a look at that one. Prompt validator integration, new artisan commands, model cast. So one of those new artisan commands is those like install commands. Model cast improvements, the once function, got to take a look at that one. Improve performance when testing with in-memory databases, improve support for MariaDB, and more. So we encourage you to check out the release notes and upgrade guide for more information with the new improvements and improvements in Laravel 11, new features and improvements. Finally, we would like to thank the Laravel community for their contributions to this release. We are truly grateful for the time and effort that so many of you have dedicated to making Laravel 11 a reality. We hope you enjoy the new release and look forward to seeing the amazing applications you build with Laravel 11. Awesome. I love it. One of the things that it's probably in the and more. One of the things I thought was really interesting was if you chose pest or PHP unit as your testing suite, anytime you create a new test using an artisan command, it's automatically using your PHP unit or your pest setup. So you don't have to change that. One of the things I'll probably actually put in a pull request for is doing the same with Volt. So I love Volt class API, and I always forget. Anytime I'm creating a new Volt component, I always forget the dash class. And so it'd be awesome if I, already set up class API with Breeze. If I create a new Volt component and just use this class automatically. I know there's probably some ways that you would want to mix and match, but I haven't seen anybody do that within an application yet. So we'll see. Let's take a look at, so one of the first things, Laravel Reverb. I actually saw a video by Luke Downing. I'll probably put that over in this little section in a little bit when I'm editing this. But one of the things that it's cool to be able to get a demo of Laravel Reverb up and running very quickly. I think he did it in a couple of minutes without having used Reverb at all before. But again, first-party WebSocket server that if you're using Laravel Forge, for example, they just have a one-click toggle and it just installs Reverb for you. This demo is awesome. So this is like real time. So someone is on this site right now, clicking those emojis. So you're subscribing via pusher. Here's the auth, here's the channel, and the message is handled. So all of a sudden you have your Reverb server, and that's what it does. It's blazing fast, seamless integration with their broadcasting capabilities. You can monitor with baked-in support with Laravel Pulse. It's built for scale, pusher protocol, so it utilizes the pusher protocol for WebSockets, making it immediately compatible with Laravel Broadcasting and Laravel Echo. I love it. Available now. So I'll probably make another video on testing that out and maybe building a cool little application. But that's awesome. Okay, so the resend mail transport is being able to use resend. So if you haven't heard of resend.com, to be able to have an easier way to send email to your users without having to use like SES or Postmark, for example. Laravel now has, or resend now has, a resend Laravel package, and then within the mail driver, you just put the transport as resend. And now all of the mail that you're using within like a mail facade is using the resend API instead of having to use anything else within Laravel. That's awesome. I think they also have right here, they also have a resend facade to be able to, if you want to, like within a controller or within a Volt component, for example, send an email quickly through resend. I've actually done this with one of my applications where I didn't necessarily want to create a whole, I wanted a quick email being sent. I didn't want to have to create a new mailable. So I just used the HTML function and just passed in HTML to that method. So that's awesome. Overall, I'm really excited for the Laravel application announcement, for the Laravel application release, and for things like Reverb and some of just those little things that have come with Laravel 11. Mostly because I'm excited for the new wave of Laravel developers this is going to introduce into the ecosystem. People who are turned off of all of the files, all of the configuration that's just given to you if you need it. Because most of the time you don't necessarily need it. And I think that's what the creators and the Laravel team have come around to, is like, most of the time you don't need those config files. Most of the time you don't need those middlewares or any of these service providers. Most of the time you just want to get up and running as quickly as possible using a SQLite database for development and just build something, get something running. And if that's the magic that you need, then Laravel 11 is going to be a perfect fit for you, because you don't have to worry about all those other things that kind of are given out of the box until you actually do need them. And then it's just as simple as using a CLI command to generate the things that you need. Overall, super excited to play around with it. I'll see you next time.